Welcome, Aabha, back to Sacred Space. Aabha is one of the most compassionate nutrition coaches and fitness trainers. And she does nutrition coaching and fitness training along with 9-week coaches, 9-week courses for groups. She also co-hosts week-long health camps and weekend health retreats. She has done numerous cooking workshops with both vegan and whole foods, and her recipes are magical. She has done in her career of nearly 2 decades. She has been featured in numerous publications, including the Hindu, cook plant-based foods and oil-free meals at the NBC convention, Nonviolent Communication Convention, for 3 years with more than 220 people. And in 2018, she cooked for the Permaculture Conference in Hyderabad with over 100 people each day. She is certified in EFT, NLP, Marma therapy, and Thai yoga massage. With a client base of hundreds of healthy individuals, it is our honor to have Aabha with us today. Welcome.
Thank you, Tara. Like I said before, it is so good to see you. And thank you for, it took me time to make the commitment to do this. And I'm glad I did it finally. So yeah, thank you very much. And I really appreciate the work our Sacred Space is doing. I was sharing with a friend this morning. Or was it this morning? Yeah, I think so. About the wonderful work you're doing there. And in fact, she's here on the session, my friend. So yeah, thank you very much for everything that you're doing. Yeah. Okay, so without much ado, I think I shall, before I get into the presentation, I wanted to share a struggle that I went through when I was preparing for this webinar. And the struggle was, how much do I share? And to what extent do I go in sharing the material that I have? And I was sharing this same struggle with Elizabeth, who's on the call or on the webinar. And Elizabeth, I don't know if everyone is comfortable, those who want to, I guess. Elizabeth is asking if I would like to see everyone's faces. Whoever is comfortable sharing is okay.
So we are recording this video and it will be posted on YouTube later. So that is
okay, fine. So that makes sense. Yeah. So if you are okay with being posted on YouTube, you can share your video. If you are not okay, then please do not. Hi, Elizabeth. So, she made a very interesting point, which just opened a different perspective for me, which is that all the years that you spend learning and understanding all these things and getting this knowledge, it's impossible to put it in an hour. And I think I was just too caught up in my own story of that I want to share the maximum I can, that I completely lost that perspective. And so thank you, Elizabeth, for making me feel better about what I did. And with that in mind, here I am. After I removed myself from the story, I did the best I could to share what I can. And I have to say, we will only be scratching the surface at max of the different things that we are discussing. And again, maybe the scratch may not be too deep. So I apologize for that, but here we are. And with that, I'm going to share my screen. I have a presentation that I made because I didn't want to miss out on stuff. And the presentation is like a guide. Okay, can you see me? Or can you see my screen?
Yes, ma'am, we can.
Yes, okay, great. All right, so we are speaking about the 6 pillars of wellness. And as I went on to work on the slideshow for this, I realized that the representation that I have used in the slideshow would have made more sense for me to call these the wheel of wellness. However, the pillars also make sense because if one pillar is weak, then the structure is going to collapse probably. So anyways, and having said that, you will notice that throughout the presentation, I have used numerous quotes. I love quotes. To me, they are a powerful way of putting a message across in a precise and concise way. And yeah, it just makes sense. And this quote to me sums up everything that we are going to speak about today. What Thomas Edison said about how the doctors of the future, and we are not there yet, because clearly this is not happening in the medical system or the healthcare system yet, where the doctor is still resorting to medications and not to food or nutrition or lifestyle or other alternative forms of healthcare, although that is changing now and more doctors are going that route, but we still have a long ways to go. So I think this quote introduces the first pillar that I'm going to speak about. And before we go any further, I would like to mention here that this is my interpretation of what is important for health or for overall wellness. And I think I'll make my point as we go along as to why I chose these 6 aspects. So the nectar of golden life of health and vitality. And for those who guessed it, yes, this is what we are talking about. And I feel that water is one of the very vital elements that is many times ignored in wellness as an important aspect. And oftentimes I feel even more so than food, it's even more important than food, because the human body on an average for about 3 to 4 weeks without food, but about 3 to 4 days without water. So that just shows how valuable it is and the power of healing. We always turn to water for healing. And it's a resource that is so easy, not anymore probably, but it's getting to be scarce, but still a very important and cheap resource that is overlooked, I feel. So what does the body have in terms of water? And this is nothing new. We all know 60% of our body is water, 70% of the earth is covered with water. In fact, the human fetus at 32 weeks of gestation is 80% water. And that percentage of water keeps going down as we get older, but as we can see, it doesn't reduce that significantly. So we are still 60% water, and everything else is the rest 40%. And if you look at this thing up here, vitamins, minerals is less than, or vitamins is less than 1%, minerals is 4%. And there is a reason why I point that out, and we will get to it later. So having said that, this 60% water that we have in our body, where exactly is it stored? I don't know if many of us think of it, but here we are. Our brain, one of the most important organs in our body, is 83% water. Our lungs, kidneys, eyes are 95% water, and blood is 94% water. That is staggering. And I would like to mention something else here. When we get a cut or a wound, and when we are bleeding there, the blood that comes to the site of the injury is 99% water, because even the body turns to water for healing. That is how important water is. So this is where the water is stored in some parts of the body and more. So you have skin, 64%, and our bones are 22% water. Because without that, our bones would just be a brittle thing. Every knock and kick would break it. It has to have some amount of elasticity as well as brittleness. Our urine is 95% water, and most of us know that urine is from where we excrete a lot of waste matter from our body. Our sweat is 90% water, and CSF is cerebrospinal fluid, which is the fluid that protects our brain and our spinal column. Very important to our body, is 99% water. So what does that mean for the role of water? Okay, so here we go. Everything dissolves in water to some extent. In varying degrees, everything dissolves in water. So what does that mean for our body in terms of water? It just means that the body needs water to dissolve the nutrients that we take in and to absorb those nutrients. It also needs water to dissolve the waste material that is created in our body for excretion. And here's what else it does. The transporting of the nutrients, the regulation of body temperature. This to me is very, very important. Something called homeostasis, which means maintaining the internal environment of the body, because our body is a very, some aspects of the body need to be very, very tightly controlled, such as the pH of the body or the calcium in the body. These are things, in fact, calcium is one of the most tightly regulated minerals in the body, and that regulation needs water. And so I see Elizabeth drinking her water. Great. So that's just a small part of what happens or what water does in the body. Besides that, moistening of our eyes, nose, mouth, making hormones and neurotransmitters, absorbing nutrients, supporting cell growth and reproduction, lubricating joints, protection of organs and tissues, brain and the spinal column is one of them, which is very, very important. And if you notice, the last one, transport of electrolytes and mineral salts, is something I have put in bold because I feel like that really needs special attention, because electrolytes and mineral salts are the ones that convey electrical signals in our body. And that is nothing but the body's messaging system. So what happens when there isn't enough water? The messaging system is distorted. And if the messaging system is not working, then the body is not able to function well as a unit. For a body to function well as a unit, all systems need to be communicating with each other. And if that communication is disrupted due to inadequate water, that's a big problem. So what happens? What happens when there is chronically low water intake? Reduced brain function. As we can see, probably the cushioning to the brain is less, and so that affects how the brain functions. Migraines, a lot of us experience that when we don't take enough water, weight gain, anxiety, depression, toxicity, toxins are not being flushed out of the body, chronic fatigue, system is not getting one of its most important fuels. Even high cholesterol to some extent is connected with low water intake, and inflammation is in capitals there. The reason I put inflammation in capitals is because what most of us don't realize is that when we don't have enough water in our body, when we are dehydrated, it sends the body into a stress response. Stress response means your body is secreting more of the stress hormones, cortisol in particular. And what that means is, and what stress does is it increases the inflammation in the body. So less water is contributing to more inflammation in the body. Just a reason enough to drink more water, because inflammation is at the root of a lot of health conditions, heart condition, many other, some forms of cancer, brain. Cognitive function is a very important factor that is affected by inflammation. I think that alone is a reason enough to drink a lot of water. Which brings us to the question of how much is enough. Well, that depends on a bunch of factors, like the physical size of the person. Somebody who is carrying excess weight may need to drink more water than somebody who is not. The activity level, if somebody is engaging in an activity that is a lot of sweating and other kind of stuff going on, they need more water. Depends on the weather. If you're in a very dry climate, you're going to need more water because you're going to lose more water through sweating and other evaporation through the skin. Your diet depends on what kind of food you're eating. If you're eating tons of raw fruits and vegetables, you may not need as much water. What is the underlying health condition for somebody who has, let's say, a kidney problem and is on water pills? May have different water requirements than somebody who is not. So the medications that one is on is also going to decide how much water you're going to need. And having said that, I will say that there is a general rule, and this I'm saying is a general rule for a healthy average individual. Like I said, one needs to consider all the factors above to decide how much water they need, but on an average for a man, it's about 3.7 liters, for a woman, 2.7, of which 20% would come from the foods we eat. So which means I would say 3 liters for a man, 2 liters for a woman, on an average, give or take a glass or two. Okay, and yes, is there something like drinking too much water? Yes, there is. You could get something called hyponatremia if you drink too much water, which is not a very common situation actually. Most people end up being dehydrated than being overhydrated. Okay, so having said that, I would move to the next thing I consider is very, very critical for our overall wellness. And if you can guess it, it is sleep. Yes, because I feel like nature is not wrong. The evolutionary process is not wrong, and it cannot make such a big mistake. When we are sleeping, we are not really productive. We are not fetching food. We are not doing anything that is constructive. We are just sleeping. And yet, that is one thing that has not changed as we have evolved as human beings, so which means it has a critical role. And what happens? What happens when we sleep? Let's just look at what happens when we sleep. We are consolidating our memories, everything that has happened during the day. It's body's opportunity to repair itself, to restore itself. There is growth that happens. Like, for example, when somebody has exercised during the day, we know that if somebody is doing strength training, they are going to experience muscle growth. A lot of that muscle growth would happen at night when there is adequate sleep. There is also the immune system that gets affected. You get your energy back. Remember those nights when you have not, those mornings when you have not slept well the previous night and you feel tired and lethargic and you're just not feeling good? That's because the body has not had an opportunity to restore itself. And these are just a few of the things. Here are some more things that happen. Our emotional brain gets recalibrated. Our appetite gets regulated. And the gut microbiome, in fact, in my program, I did an assignment, a full assignment on the connection of sleep and gut microbiome. And the connection is staggering. And for a good reason, I think, because our stomach is now considered to be our second brain. And the stomach and the brain have a communication mechanism where they are constantly in touch with each other and one affects the other. Like if your gut is unhealthy, it's going to affect your brain. If your brain is not doing okay, it's going to affect your gut. And it also fine-tunes your metabolism. So anybody trying to lose weight, first, want to fix your sleep. And here's something that is the most important thing, I think. Sleeping brains take a bath, literally. This is, this is staggering, and I find it the most fascinating thing of the human body. The cells in our brain shrink a tiny bit when we are in deep sleep, allowing the CSF, the cerebrospinal fluid, to move around and mop away all the debris that have been collected there during the day, especially stuff like beta amyloids, which are linked to conditions such as Alzheimer's and dementia. So imagine when we are not getting that deep sleep, and I emphasize deep because it's not going to happen if you're just lying in bed, if you're not in full sleep, and that's a much longer discussion or a conversation, because our sleep, we go through many stages in our sleep. But if you're not in deep sleep, this particular thing, the lymphatic drainage, is not going to happen, which means all the debris are staying there. And what does that mean? It means inflammation for the brain. And the brain is a very, very delicate organ. It's for a reason that it's secured inside this thick skull. It's a very delicate organ, needs to be protected, needs to be cared for. So what happens when we don't get, or what else does it influence? If we don't get enough sleep, what happens? You name it. If we are not sleeping enough the next day, we are not productive enough. We are not able to focus on what we need to do, not able to learn, memorize, and because it affects our metabolism, our body weight is affected. It also has an impact on inflammation, glucose metabolism, which means if we are not sleeping enough, we are at a higher risk of developing type 2 diabetes. Our immune system gets compromised due to inadequate sleep. And this overlooked aspect of wellness is now getting some recognition And the CDC has now declared insufficient sleep, as the Center for Disease Control has declared insufficient sleep as a public health epidemic, along with a lot of other health conditions like diabetes, blood pressure, heart conditions, which are essentially lifestyle conditions. And sleep also falls in that category because sleep deprivation many a times is a chosen lifestyle by many people. We don't have enough time to get into that, but it also matters what time you go to bed and what time you wake up. And the ambience, your sleeping ambience, what is your room like? How much light is coming in? There are many, many factors that affect this. So what I can say about that is good sleep is the single most effective thing we can do to rest our body and brain every single day. And the reason I say every single day is because every night that you have slept 2 hours less, you're in a sleep debt. So let's say you're working and throughout the week for 5 days, you sleep 2 hours less, which means you have a sleep debt of 10 hours. And over a period of time, that debt just keeps on increasing. Can you get rid of that debt? Not really, because you can't just keep sleeping to get rid of the debt. So it just keeps accumulating and the damage done stays. There's only so much you can do to reverse that damage. And so, like Matthew Walker says in his book, Why We Sleep, the elastic band of sleep deprivation can stretch only so far before it snaps. And it snaps. And once it snaps, it is a dominoes effect. One thing affects another and another and another, and it just spirals into a catastrophe of health conditions. So, how much is enough? And this is what most of the studies out there suggest. We know how much kids sleep, how much infants sleep. They spend most of their time sleeping because their brains are developing. We are born with half-baked brains. The rest of the development of our brain happens in this real world. And sleep is very important for the development of that brain. Part of the reason why probably infants sleep so much. And so while here it says that 7 to 8 hours, there are varying studies and that suggest between 7 and 9 hours. I would like to think 8 hours is good. And when we are saying 8 hours, we are not talking about the time in bed, because you're going to need a certain amount of time to fall asleep too once you hit that pillow. Unless you're very fortunate and you fall asleep right away, then that's a different thing. But you want to factor that in. So if you, let's say on an average day, you take 10 minutes to fall asleep, you take 15 minutes to fall asleep, you want to be in bed 10 minutes, 15 minutes before you start counting those 8 hours. Having said that, we are going to move to the next one, which is very obvious. And I would like to remind here that these are not put in any particular sequence of importance. The importance of one particular aspect may be more to somebody than some other aspect to someone else, because everybody's different, everybody's unique, and everybody's needs are unique. And this is how I feel, is that our bodies are very smart and know how to heal themselves, but they need the right nutrients to do that. I mean, if somebody who's building a building knows how to build it, but doesn't have the right material, he's not going to be able to do it. And may have material that is not good quality, so that'll decide the quality of the structure that is built. And if we were to compare our body to a building, the quality of that structure is exactly the quality of what goes in it. So, and what I'm saying here, these facts, most of us know. It's not new, and yet I think it's a good reminder. And when I say cholesterol alone is not the enemy, it's really what happens to the cholesterol when it goes inside the body. It's the oxidation of the cholesterol that's the problem, really. What we are measuring, like the LDL and the HDL, are really proteins that are carrying the cholesterol to the cells. The cholesterol is needed because the cholesterol or fat basically is an important factor for our cell membranes. Our cell membranes are made up of water and fat. So if there isn't enough fat, the cell membranes are not going to be strong enough. The reason I say low fat is not healthy does not necessarily mean healthy is because what all has the food gone through, what processing has happened to the food to make it low fat, really. Vegetarian does not mean healthy either, because something may be super fried, very high in trans fats, it's vegetarian, but doesn't make it healthy. Organic and gluten-free does not mean healthy either. Because if I have a bag of chips that is organic, and it's gluten-free, it's made from potatoes, that doesn't make it healthy. So it is important to consider the nutritional aspect of what goes into our body. Vitamins and minerals have no calories. That's fun. That is so good. And it is important for us to respect our bio-individuality. Just because something works for somebody doesn't mean it's going to work for you or for me. Everybody is different. Everybody's needs are different, and we need to respect that. It does not mean one size fits all. And what is also important to consider is that for the first time in human history, we are being told how to eat. We were born with this ability to eat. We knew how to eat. Nobody taught us how to eat. The human evolution is a couple of million years old, and the whole food revolution is a few thousand years old. Our bodies are not able to keep up and evolve at the pace the food revolution is going on. It's simply not possible. And with the whole advent of agriculture, we are focused on specific foods. And when I say 60% of the calories we consume come from 3 plants, wheat, rice, and corn mainly for North America, I would say, and some of the other parts of the world, but this is world statistics. And I know that in India, a lot of our calories come from wheat and rice. And so we have moved away from some of the other grains that we had access to. Here's the good news. Vitamins and minerals have no calories, but they have a big role to play. So we don't necessarily have to worry about getting too many calories from vitamins and minerals, and yet we can nourish our body. And I would like to mention one thing here is that calories count, but you don't have to count them. If you know you're eating the right kinds of food, then you don't necessarily need to count your calories. And very important, not getting fooled by the claims on labels, because what is happening is food manufacturers are coming up with creative food labeling as the general public discovers that, okay, this food labeling means this. They come up with creative ways of labeling food, and the latest is natural. What does natural mean anyways? How could a packet of biscuits that is labeled natural be natural by any stretch of imagination? So, very important, we don't get fooled by the labels. And so what does nutrition really do for the body? Here's how I would put it. If we were to consider our body as a building, like I said before, carbohydrates, proteins, and fats would be the bricks. Vitamins and minerals are the cement, and water is all what keeps it together. Because without water, our body is not going to be able to use any of those. Just like you're not going to be able to use that cement and bricks if you don't have water. Once again, good enough reason to drink lots of water. And having said that, what is good nutrition really? And I'm not going to say something that is out of the ordinary here, regional and seasonal. And why is regional and seasonal so important? Like I mentioned before, I believe that nature is never wrong. And every season, we get fruits and vegetables that are needed by our body during that season. Why is regional important? There is increasing studies that show that the soil in a particular region has the nutrients that are needed for the climate of that region. There is a reason why certain foods grow in certain regions and certain don't. And so eating regional and seasonal just makes sense. What else? Variety, variety, variety. And I cannot emphasize this enough. Unfortunately, when we say variety, a lot of us have taken it in a different way. Variety is the spice of life. And what I mean by variety is that it could be roti sabji, that is the vegetable and roti every day, but a different vegetable. That's what variety means. Eating a variety, eating a broad spectrum of fruits and vegetables. That's what I mean by variety. Not necessarily a different dish. And the power of color. Eat the rainbow. Every food gets its characteristic color because of the nutrients it has. And so the more colors you eat, the more variety of nutrients you get, which is very, very, very important. For obvious reason, because if you're eating just one color, one variety of fruits or one variety of vegetables, your body is going to be depleted in some of the other nutrients. So, and of course, minimally processed. The closest we can eat it to in the way nature offered to us. That's the best way to eat it. But here's something very important. And I think this is a huge problem. We are so driven by the clock, we don't even realize whether we are hungry or not. The clock says it's time to eat. And we are not really even questioning whether we are hungry. So how do we identify whether we are hungry. Interview your hunger. What does that even mean? How do I interview my hunger? So what we need to experience is true hunger. What we are experiencing, most of us, is the filling and the emptying of the stomach. And when the stomach is empty, we think we're hungry. Hunger is really something that is the body's desire to maintain the muscle and the tissue in the body. So what would you do to interview your hunger? Asking yourself, am I really hungry or am I just craving for food? Is it withdrawal from food? Would I eat an apple or a salad if I'm offered right now? I'm hungry if I'm ready to eat that. But nah, I want something else. Not really hungry then. You're just craving for food. Probably. But this is what it is most of the times. Hunger really means a dramatically heightened sensation of taste, which means that no matter what you eat at that time, it'll taste good. Even if it's a leaf, it'll taste good. That means we're really hungry. Having said that, and having spoken of brain, our cognitive health is a choice that we make with every bite that we take. What we eat not only affects our health, just what we see physically, not the weight, it also affects our brain. Remember inflammation? We spoke about inflammation, eating the wrong foods, leading to inflammation, leading to cell damage, and more damage to the brain. So when we are speaking about nutrition, we often overlook the brain. We often overlook our cognitive health, which is a very, very important aspect of nutrition as well. Which brings us to the next point, which is what nutrients are most important. Well, that's a tough one for me to answer. It's like when I do cooking workshops and people ask me, what is your favorite dish? I love food. I'm a foodie. I just love food. It just so happens that I have probably over time retrained my taste buds to eat the right foods or to like the right foods. That's it. But I love food. I have to admit that. Having said that, what nutrients are important would depend on if there is a health condition, if there is an underlying medical condition, if somebody is taking certain medications, if there is, for example, with medications, one thing that comes to mind right off the bat is grapefruit is not something that you would have with thyroid medication. So it depends on if you're on certain medications. If you're having health conditions that may get aggravated because of certain foods, maybe an autoimmune condition that is going to get aggravated because of certain foods, what kind of occupation you're in. And the reason I mentioned that there is because if you are working in a place where you're exposed to a lot of toxins, then you may want to focus on foods that support higher level of detoxification than an average person does. And so it depends on what kind of work you do. It depends on your stress level, because if you are in a high stress job, then your adrenals are overworked. And so you want foods that are going to support your adrenals, that are going to support better adrenal health, support your stress. And having said all that, I do have favorites with some of the nutrients. One of them is vitamin D. And vitamin D happens to be my favorite because most of us look at vitamin D for bone health. It has a role way beyond bone health. It plays a very important role in regulating our nervous system. It is an immune system modulator and a bunch of things that it does in the body. And most of us are not getting enough of it, especially because we don't spend enough time in the sun. And the time we spend in the sun is under the sunscreen. So your body is not getting exposed to direct sun, which is needed for the skin to manufacture that vitamin D. Another important, or my favorite, is B vitamins. All the B vitamins. Very important for the metabolism of the foods we eat. Very important for adrenal support. Very important for a lot of cell building. So I like my B vitamins. And another thing is trace minerals. And the reason I mentioned trace minerals here, and these are my latest favorite actually, is because we are really supposed to get all the trace minerals from our food, especially the vegetables and fruits that we eat, and they get it from the soil. And our soil is so depleted right now that most of our foods don't have the trace minerals that they should be having. So trace minerals is one of the things that I really like. And that brings us to the next thing, which probably is obvious. Exercise. And so when someone says, a fitness enthusiast says, oh, I had a bad workout. No, it still did something. The only bad workout is when it doesn't happen. That's when it's a bad workout because it hasn't done anything. But I like to call it movement instead of exercise, because exercise makes many people nervous. Exercise for a lot of people is going and lifting weights. Exercise for a lot of people is doing something that will make you huff and puff and sweat. And it doesn't have to be that way. So before we get too much into exercise, here are a few facts that I would like to mention. I don't know how many of us know this, but yes, we have over 650 muscles. Not all of them can be voluntarily exercised. Some of them are involuntary muscles, and we don't have direct control over them, I should say. And here is something exciting. Muscle is 3 times more efficient at burning calories than fat. What does that mean? If we want to lose weight, pack on some muscle. The best way to keep the weight off. The more muscle you have, the more calories you're going to burn, because muscle maintenance needs calories. Many a times when people are exercising or doing some kind of movement and they're sweating a lot, they feel like, lots of fat lost. Unfortunately not. There is no direct correlation between how much you sweat and how much fat we lose. Because sweating is just a mechanism for the body to cool itself. And somebody's body may heat up sooner than somebody else's, with much lesser activity than somebody else's. So sometimes we are misguided into thinking that if I sweat a lot means I have burnt a lot of calories. Me, for one, I barely sweat. That does not mean that I don't burn calories when I'm exercising, but I don't sweat as much. Men and women respond differently to exercise. And the reason I want to mention this here is because when I don't do it anymore, but when I was training clients for fitness, the women clients, oftentimes when I encourage them to lift weights, the response was, oh, I'm going to be muscular. And what I have to say to that is that if you can't grow a mustache, then you cannot be bulky and muscular like a man is going to be. Because we are wired differently. We have different hormones. We have different levels of hormones. And so we are not going to bulk up the way men do. Yes, we will tone up very nicely, but not bulk. And 30 minutes of workout can boost our mood for up to 12 hours. I think that's a good incentive to work out. That's a disproportionate benefit. And here's something very important. Exercise alone is not going to promote weight loss and is not going to promote losing fat in a certain area. A lot of times, we are worried about our waistline. Men are worried about their bellies. And, oh, I just want this abdominal fat to go away. And so I'm going to do crunches. Crunches is going to give you strong abs, not a flat stomach. Because the body doesn't know that you're doing crunches to lose fat over your belly. What the body is doing is it's losing fat all over. It's not going to lose fat in a specific area. So the fat loss has to be initiated for the entire body. And that's when you're going to lose that fat over the hips, over the belly, wherever we want it. But no exercise is going to promote fat loss in a specific area. Yes, you will tone the area. So you would see a difference there, but not fat loss necessarily. And exercising alone is not going to be enough to lose weight. And I mentioned this because, again, when I signed up clients for fitness training, I specifically asked what the goal was. And if the goal is weight loss, I made it very clear that you're not going to lose all the weight that you want to through exercise alone unless you spend hours exercising. Because at the end of the day, the equation is calories in, calories out. So if you are exercising, expending a certain amount of calories, and you are putting in more than what you have expended during the day, weight loss is not going to happen. And here's something that is really worth paying attention to, because it may seem like, yes, you're losing 80% muscle mass, but what does that translate into as far as day-to-day life goes? You've lost strength, probably lost balance, which also means that one may have more falls as we get older and bones are not taken care of, which means more bones are breaking and a bunch of stuff going on. So it's not just losing fat, but we also want to losing muscle. So we also want to look at the implications of what happens when we lose that muscle. The body's not strong anymore to support its structure. And that's a big problem. And what is interesting is that our posture has an impact on our health. It has an impact on our health. And as we get older, if we don't have enough muscle, we are going to be in a compromised posture, which means it's going to doubly impact our health. So, what can exercise actually do for us? Slow aging. And when I say slow aging, one is, yes, you have more muscle, you're more toned, so visibly you look younger, but that's not what I mean by slow aging here. What I mean by slow aging is it also has an impact on your brain. According to a research that was done by Dr. Wendy Suzuki, 30 minutes of aerobic activity can affect your prefrontal cortex and it can affect your long-term memory. So what does that mean? It just means that you probably are not getting prevention. So this is not preventive of Alzheimer's or dementia later on in life. What it can definitely do is it can delay it. Because the size of your prefrontal cortex, which is your working memory, increases. And the bigger the size, the more time it is going to take for all the cells to die. So which means you are probably having slightly more time before you hit that. And having said that does not mean that you have to have dementia or Alzheimer's. I mean, that's a whole different topic again, because lifestyle changes can be made to prevent those conditions. What aerobic activity also does is boost something called BDNF, brain-derived neurotrophic factor in the brain, which is nothing but a protective protein which supports the survival of the existing neurons in the brain and also promotes growth of new ones, which means neuroplasticity. And for those of us who don't know what neuroplasticity is, it's the brain's capacity to change and adapt at any stage in life. So, which makes sense that exercise improves brain performance, boosts immunity, and that connection is still being studied. We don't know exactly how, but it does boost immunity. Reduces appetite. Isn't that funny? One would think if you're exercising, you would be more hungry. And before I knew a whole lot about nutrition, I started exercising first. And I realized that every time I was regular with my exercise, I ate less. And I was confused. I thought something was wrong with me. But what exercise does is it reduces our hunger hormones. And hence, we eat less or we feel less hungry. It promotes better sleep. And here's something important to remember. Being dehydrated and poor sleep reduce exercise performance. And yep, it promotes better mood. Exercise promotes the release of endorphins in our body, and it's probably a very effective antidepressant. Yes, we need to motivate ourselves to go and do that when we are depressed. But once we snap that and snap out of it and exercise, it is guaranteed to make you feel better. So, how much? There is no one size fits all. Again, depends on what the health condition is, depends on if there is any medical situation going on, if somebody is on any kind of medications, also goals. Somebody may just want to feel good. Somebody may want to pack muscle. Somebody may want to combine it with their weight loss goal with nutrition. So it depends on what the goal of the individual is. However, for the most basic thing, according to research, 30 minutes of exercise for 4 to 5 times a week seems to be something that would work. And never too old. Never too old. And the reason I say that is because I have had clients who started exercising when they were 65. And this one particular client I had who had a sciatica problem and she could barely walk. And in 3 months, she was able to do a hike without any problems. At the age of 65, eventually she got to a point where she would beat me in push-ups. I think that is pretty amazing. That is incredible. And for somebody who cannot move, just simple exercises, just sitting in a chair. It's possible. Once we start somewhere, then one thing leads to another, and you just keep progressing on the path. So that brings us to, and I think I am overshooting time here, so I'm going to be a little fast on the next two things. We are social beings. And yes, I am speaking about relationships. And we're moving into a somewhat gray area now, because this is not something that has been researched a ton, but it's getting its due credit now. And what the limited research that is done suggests is that social relationships have a lot of influence on our health, not just health, but also on mortality, longevity. People with good, healthy social relationships live a longer life. Also, fewer social ties are connected with more health conditions, especially things like cardiovascular disease and coronary heart disease, and even isolation can lead to slower wound healing, is something that has been studied. And social isolation was one of the torture mechanisms used for prisoners of war, because it would just lead to psychological and physiological disintegration of the prisoner. So that is how powerful social connection is. It affects our inflammatory biomarkers. If we have a good social connect circle, we have less inflammation, hence affects the immune system, and it fosters a sense of meaning and purpose in life. So, supportive interactions also reduce allostatic load, and allostatic load is nothing but the wear and tear that happens in our body and brain due to chronic stress. And who is not stressed these days? Most of us are. So just having some nice, healthy, meaningful social connections can help us with that. I'm not saying it'll take it away, but if it can reduce it, why not? Again, benefits the immune system, endocrine and cardiovascular function. Endocrine system is basically our hormonal system. And for anybody who has studied the body a little bit more, would know that we are all, our existence pretty much is a game of hormones. Our hunger is derived by hormones. Our sugar level, insulin is a hormone. Our sugar levels are derived by hormones. So everything is a game of hormones. It, of course, enhances physiological and psychological well-being, and the World Health Organization now recognizes mental health as an essential dimension of overall health. And here's something staggering. 37% of the total years of healthy life are lost because of mental health issues. More than a third of our life. That's staggering. And having said that, can have cost too, because not necessarily all social relations are healthy. They could cause more stress than benefit. If my closest interactions are people who are engaged in eating right, exercising, it's going to have an influence on me. I'll probably start eating right. I'll probably start eating healthy and exercising more. If my closest connections are people who are engaged in a very unhealthy lifestyle, it's probably going to affect me. I may end up doing some of the things they do. So not necessary that all social interactions are beneficial. It's for each one of us to decide what serves and what does not. And so here's what sums it up, actually. Epigenetics means what we eat, how we live, love, and all that alters how our genes behave. And why is this important? Because the simplest way to put it is that our genes are the ones that load the gun, while our choices are the ones that pull the trigger. What that means simply is that we have a certain genetic coding, but how those genes express themselves depends on our environment, which we can control to a large extent. Part of that environment is our social interactions, which we can control to some extent, which is probably why in the COVID self-isolation situation or the whole social distancing situation, the mental health issues worldwide have gone up. There's a lot of other issues that have happened. Domestic violence has gone up. And people are just feeling sad for a good reason. We are meant to be social. And speaking of the last pillar, what is planted in each person's soul will sprout. And I add to that, if we give it a chance. And what do I mean by that? Yeah. Soul care, interchangeably used as self-care. I like to call it soul care because self-care a lot of times is considered being selfish. It's not being selfish. It just means taking care of yourself. And I have attempted to put a few definitions for what it would mean, what soul care or self-care would mean to different individuals. So it's just a conscious act to promote your own well-being. Very important. Being compassionate to yourself, caring for our own wants and needs, not being selfish, but just caring for what is it that we need right now. Understanding our intrinsic purpose and our values, and our intrinsic values here is esteem, whether it is fulfillment, whether it is growth, self-actualization, whatever it is. And very important, having the courage to be vulnerable, having the courage to say, I need help. We are not afraid to use crutches when we have a fracture in our foot or when we have a problem with our leg. But we are conditioned to look at not feeling well emotionally is not something good. That's the conditioning we have. And it's changing now, but not changed enough. That people are comfortable enough to say, I need help. I'm struggling with this. I need help. And one good example of this is just at the beginning of the webinar, I shared the conversation with Elizabeth, and it just showed me a different perspective. When I shared my struggle with her, because I was so caught up in my own story that I was not able to pull myself out of the story and look at the bigger picture here. And having that brief conversation just did that for me. It's okay to ask for help. So what is, and how do we know? How do we know how to take care of our soul? I don't have an answer. Here's what I say. We all need to do some detective work. We all need to connect with ourselves. We all need to ask the question, what makes me come alive? What is it that I enjoy doing the most? What is it that makes me feel energized? What is that activity that makes me lose track of time? And I laughed so much when I put this there, and I'm still laughing because I'm not talking about spending time in front of the screen. Whether it is TV, computer, yes, we lose track of time there. But does it make you come alive? Does it make you feel energized? Probably not. And that is a question for each one of us to answer for ourselves. There is no universal answer to that. But here's what soul care is, for sure, is to put our needs first unapologetically. Very important, without feeling guilty. We simply cannot pour from an empty cup. And we have to fill our cup from time to time. Because if our cup is full, then we are able to fill somebody else's cup. If we are cared for, we can care for somebody else. But if there is a burnout, if you're burnt out, there's no way you're going to be able to care for somebody else. And here's what I would say. It's not optional. Nobody's going to prescribe it to you. We have to take it upon ourselves to care for us. Nobody's going to say, oh, you need to take care of yourself. Yeah, a good friend would, yes. It's not going to be a prescription given by a doctor or anybody else. And so, in order to care for yourself, that's where we need to dive deep within our hearts, connect with ourselves. So there we have it, what I consider the 6 pillars of wellness. And the wheel of wellness, what I would encourage, here's something I would encourage each one of you to do is draw your own wheel. This being 0, this being 10, and where you are. Let's see how well the wheel moves. The more jagged the wheel is, the less smoothly it is going to move. Well, I'm right here right now for movement for the past couple of weeks. This is not, by the way, my wheel really, but you get an idea. So it would be, I would really encourage each one of us to go and do that. And I think this is an activity that will benefit being done from time to time, just to take stock. And I will finish with a quote. Oh, come on. Okay. That I like a lot. I think it just, I like this quote because it expresses so well how I would like to live my life. So thank you very much, everyone. I'm sorry for going over time. Yep, 20 minutes over time. All right.
Ma'am, will you stop your screen share?
Yes. Yep. Here we are.
So Niharika is asking, how do we measure our water intake?
Good one. Here's what I suggest a lot of my clients. Okay, so for starters, there are two ways I would interpret this question. One is that, is she asking how much water, how do I track how much water I drink during the day?
Right.
Or how much water should I drink? And if she's asking the first one, which is how do I track how much water I drink during the day, a very simple trick that I share with my
Is there other information?
Okay, I lost you for a little bit, Nipunika.
Yes. Is it okay now?
Yep.
Okay. Please go ahead.
Yeah, so I don't know if you heard my response, did you?
No, we didn't hear the response.
Oh, okay. So what I was saying is that if she's wanting to track how much water she drinks during the day, then this is what I share with my clients is have a water bottle. Better if it's a 1 liter bottle, and then you have 2 rubber bands around it, and you slide one rubber band when you finish one bottle, you slide another one when you finish another bottle, and there you have it.
Right. Okay. I think some of them want to know the intake, water intake for kids, let's say 8 years and younger, or if
Okay,
there's another
so
age for that.
yeah, so there is a formula that you go by, and which is the weight of the body divided by a third is what is in ounces. So I have been struggling a little bit, but I did not spend enough time in trying to figure out the formula for converting it into the metric system, which is kgs and
Liters.
liters.
Yeah.
Yes, but this is the formula for pounds and ounces.
Okay.
Yeah, and it's really, the formula is very simple. If you look it up online, there are tons of places where you'll find it.
Okay.
Yeah, but having said that, I would recommend bearing in mind all the other factors, including what kind of foods. Kids especially do not eat enough raw vegetables and stuff, so they may need, I would say, 20% more than what you would think they need.
Okay. Yes,
Yeah.
those are the questions we have.
Okay.
Sorry. Okay. Nalini ma'am has a question. Can you speak about alkaline water? How, like, is there any value that we should know about?
Okay, so alkaline water is something that keeps coming up. I will say what I think about it. I am not too hung up on alkaline water. I just feel like let's get started with drinking enough water to begin with. And also, while the pH of the body is very tightly regulated, you don't want to throw that off and make the body too alkaline for all kinds of unwanted microorganisms to grow. So that's the catch there. So would that mean the body has to work harder to keep that pH level if we are having alkaline water? I don't have an answer. I feel, one, drinking clean water, and which is becoming increasingly difficult because of the chlorine and the fluoride and all the other stuff that is added. So instead of going for alkaline, I would say go for filtered water or water that is cleaned in some way, basically. Yeah. I know that does not answer the question fully, but I don't have a yes or no
Right.
to that question.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Yeah, that's all, ma'am.
Okay.
Thank you, Abha. The six pillars really, bring so much clarity, have brought so much clarity to me of what changes I need to bring into my life.
Yeah.
These are things we know of, but when you place it out right there and then you see, draw the wheel, then I just look at it and I say, yeah, there's a lot of
This
work.
wheel is not moving.
Oh, what's really wanting?
This wheel is stuck right now. Good to see you, Auntie.
Oh, it's such a delight to see you.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, well, yes, I think, and none of what we spoke about today is things we don't know. We know all of this. Sometimes it's just a reminder that is needed and a way to put things in perspective. And I think the wheel is a beautiful way to put it in perspective because, yeah,
there was a
whether it moves or not, and how smoothly does it move,
yeah.
right?
There was some questions about how much water we drink earlier. Like, should we be getting most of our water from fruits, or should we really be drinking water directly?
Drinking water directly.
Okay.
Yeah, about 20% of the water we drink should be coming, or water the body needs should be coming from food, or typically comes from food. But we do need to drink that pure, clean water for the body to be able to use it right away. So the body doesn't have to work to make it usable. For that matter, when we are drinking cold water, the body has to work to bring it to temperature before it can use it.
So you think cold water is better than hot water?
No, cold water is something we don't want to have because the body is going to have to work it to bring it to temperature.
Okay. Like
Yeah.
ice water or even water from a mud pot?
Mud pot is great. Ice water is what I'm talking about. Mud pot is great. In fact, I got a mud water bottle when I came here. A lot of weight, but I did. Yeah.
So I'm going to keep looking at this wheel: water, sleep, nutrition, movement. I take for granted movement, but these days movement is now.
No.
I really need to watch that as well. Relationships,
Yeah.
soul care.
Yeah.
I got it down here, and really, I think your talk, like you said, there's so much of information that we already have, and really bringing it all together and making it part of our lives every day.
Yeah. One of the easiest way for me to do that is I have quotes and I have things stuck on the wall all over. So it's a reminder. It's a reminder every time you see that. And because it's so easy to forget, right? We get caught up in our day-to-day life and it's just so easy to forget some of this stuff. Not that we don't know.
Yes.
We know it all. We know it all. It's always been there. It's just a matter of keeping it in perspective.
Yes.
And to me, these little notes on the wall are good reminders.
Yeah. And I love the idea of the wheel because the sense of balance and movement.
Yeah.
That is. And I want to thank you for bringing in so much construction. If you talk about bringing the mortar and the cement and the water together.
I think we remember, at least for me, I remember analogies, and I am a visual learner, so I remember pictures more than the words that I read. So I think that's how I learn, and that's that's how I tend to convey then.
We can speak all the NLP and um, all your other
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
presentation.
Right. Yeah. Well, yeah, it's interesting. Yeah.
I hope this is going to be the beginning of many sessions with you and extended programs with you. I enjoyed
I look
you.
forward to that. Yeah,
Great to see
it
you.
is a joy. Yeah.
Thank you so
All
much,
right.
ma'am, for your talk and the wonderful insights. Thank you, everyone, for joining us on a Sunday morning, especially ma'am for her. If she's awake only for us. So thank you.
Yeah, it's yeah, it's I did, yeah, I start winding down by 8 o'clock. It is 10 o'clock for me now.
Yeah.
So yeah.
When are you returning to India?
I'm sorry, I well don't know. Not yet. Yeah.
Thank you, everyone, for
Yeah,
joining
it
us.
was a joy to be here. And yes, like you said, Nipunika, thank you for sharing your valuable Sunday morning. I know how precious it is. So yeah.
Yeah. Thank you.
Okay.
Stay safe. Take care.
You too. Bye-bye.
Bye.